the road again. We can't wait to get on the road again. Telling stories to our family and our friends. We can't wait to get on the road again. On the road again. We can't wait to get on the road again. Telling stories to our friends. We can't wait to get on the road again.
Welcome to our monthly AAA podcast, Affinity, Allie, and Annette on the road to good storytelling with your hosts, Allie Spooner and moi.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. This is Allie Spooner, and I write with Affinity Rainbow Publications and am a co-host with Miss Annette Maury on our podcast. I've written a bunch of different books, and I'm a true genre hopper. I may go from cowgirls one minute to off the grid the next to paranormal to a romance, whatever. So I have a bunch of different stories and a bunch of different genres to look at, both series and standalones. A few short stories, but here lately it's been a lot of series. So uh, to my publisher's chagrin, I think sometimes, but I enjoy writing the different characters. I'm going to be reading today from my latest book, which is Dangerous Ice, which is a sequel to The Blank White Page. They're both pretty much standalone books, but if you want the entire background on the characters, because they're the same characters in both books, I would recommend getting The Blank White Page, which is on sale right now this month for $2.99. So you get the full picture in the flavor of the characters.
And I'm Annette Maury, and I'm also with Affinity Rainbow Publications. I don't have quite as many books as Allie, but I'm also a genre hopper and have done just about every subgenre there is out there with a romantic blend twist to it. So this usually, sometimes we invite special guests, but today our special guest is the co-host Allie Spooner, and so she's already introduced herself. So I'm not really going to introduce her, but what we're talking about today is living off the stories with living off the grid, and I get to ask bunches of questions and grill my co-host Allie. So, anyways,
Turnabout's fair play, right?
turnabout's fair play.
Okay. Again, I'm reading from Dangerous Ice, and this is book two in the Blank White Page series. And this is a little bit into the book. It opens up with a pretty tragic scene, so I'm going to continue on from there. River crossed the bridge from the village, and she felt her heartbeat quicken. In 2 short hours, she would be back in Tatum's arms. She was tempted to go heavy on the throttle to get home quicker, but there were still dangers she would need to be careful to avoid on the trail. As thick as the snow was, a fallen tree could easily be concealed on the trail. River would need to scan the areas beside the trail to prevent a possible collision that would seriously delay her trip and her health. She didn't want to get caught on the trail when the snow began to fall, as it was threatening to do. River was almost halfway home when the snow arrived, slowing her progress and diminishing her visibility. Damn it, she growled and pulled down her visor. The heated helmet had been a brilliant idea, keeping her head warm as she slogged through the thick snow. As she feared, a small tree had fallen, and she had to stop to remove it from the trail. She dropped the trunk into the woods, and her eyes drifted to the frozen river. Thoughts flashed of Jay's body, trapped somewhere under the ice. That had to be a terrible way to die. The vision chilled her, and River shivered. She pulled her eyes from the river bank to the snow machine. She River decided that one of the things she would teach Tatum was how to test ice on the river, so she would have those skills. She would also teach Reba. Losing either of them would destroy her. The weather would start to warm soon, and the ice would become even more fragile. River climbed back onto the machine and continued down the trail. The smell in the kitchen helped to lighten Tatum's spirits. The brownies were cooling, and she was warming the frosting to cover the cake when she heard Poe call out. Tatum rushed to the kitchen window and saw the headlights from River's snow machine bouncing down the trail. Yes, she cried, grabbing her coat before rushing out to meet River. River had pulled the machine into the shed, picked up her bags, and rushed towards Tatum. She dropped the bags in the sled and ran to meet Tatum. River took Tatum in her arms and kissed her hungrily. Tatum's body was rapidly cooling from the falling snow, so River broke the kiss. So happy to be home. Let's get inside before you freeze. Tatum grabbed the bag and took River's hand as they walked quickly to the cabin. I'm glad you're finally here. Hey, Poe, River said as they climbed under the porch. I'm surprised you haven't coaxed him inside the house. It's not for a lack of trying. We compromise, and I place a hot water bottle under Poe's rabbit pelts before bed. That was smart. River pushed the door open and closed it behind them. It's toasty warm in here, River said. She dropped her bag by the door and pulled off her coat. Tatum pulled her close and frowned when she saw the injury to her cheeks. What happened? It's a long story. Can we have some coffee and I'll fill you in? River asked. She sniffed the air and looked at the pan of brownies on the counter. Maybe a brownie? I'm suddenly hungry. Take a seat and I'll make us some coffee. She handed the brownie pan to River with a knife and 2 plates. Eat all you want. I have a cake for dessert tonight. Do we still have milk? Yes, love, we do. I got a gallon thawed out. River cut a large slice of brownie and took a bite. Oh my goodness, these are heavenly. I was trying to stay busy this morning while I waited for you. Mom, Reba, and Sonia send their love. I promised them we would visit for a few days next week after I rested for a while. That will be fun, Troy. That would be fun. Troy called this morning. Everything okay? He was calling to tell us that he would start pilot school next month. That's fantastic news. I know Troy must be on cloud 9. Tatum nodded. He also shared the bad news from the village that one of the kids fell into the river under the ice. They called Erica to be on the lookout for his body. Tatum saw River flinch at that statement. Did you know about the accident? Unfortunately, about an hour from the village yesterday, I saw headlights from a snow machine flying across the river. It was a young man named Jay. He was barely 16. He must have hit some overflow ice on the river, and he was thrown into the water. Tatum saw tears begin to fall. I couldn't reach him in time. He surfaced once, flailing his arms before the strong current caught him and pulled him under the ice. When I reached the river, I swept snow away with my hands, but I couldn't see through the thick ice. He was nowhere to be seen. I searched for an hour, but couldn't find any sign of him. Is that where you got the burns? A mild case of frostbite. I wasn't aware of until Nikita pointed it out. I've been treating it with some ointment. I am so sorry you had to experience that, but I know you did everything possible to save him. I was too late. It's still doubtful he would have survived even if I could have reached him in time, but at least Jay's mother would have had a body to bury. That's got to be a horrible for a mother, not having any real closure. I pulled his snow machine back to the village and got one of the elders to go with me to break the news. To say she was devastated would be an understatement. She said Jay was going stir crazy at home and wanted to get out for a while, so he rode up the river. I don't know why he wasn't on the trail unless he thought he could go faster on the river.
Ah, that's great. As you were doing the reading, it reminded me, before we get into the real questioning, it did remind me that every time I read snow machine, I want to ask you, is there a difference between a snowmobile and a snow machine, or is it just like the vernacular that we
Same
use
thing.
is snowmobiles?
Yeah,
And
yeah. It's basically the same thing.
okay, all right. I was like, maybe there's a special like snow machine up in Alaska. I didn't know. I was like, because I've always known them as snowmobiles.
Yeah.
All right. So let's get into the nitty gritty. Tell us what your inspiration was for Dangerous Ice. How did you come up with the plot for this continuing story of River and Tatum?
Well, basically, I just wanted to continue their story. In book one, they established a relationship after Tatum fell in love with the area and fell in love with the people, the environment, and most importantly, with River, and decided that she wasn't going back to the big city of Chicago and she was going to stay and make her way living off the grid at the cabin. And so I tried to build in a little bit more angst in this story, and just continue what I thought would be their next logical steps in their relationship and in their adventures.
Was there a specific inspiration about, I mean, it's a pretty dramatic opening with the whole Dangerous Ice thing that the
Yeah.
story kind of revolves around. Was there something that inspired you to write about that, about people falling through the ice, and
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's something that happens all too frequently, especially with younger, inexperienced people, and with some older, experienced people that they don't heed caution like they should at times, and they fall through what is called dangerous ice, and they lose their lives. And I thought that would be a perfect opening for this book.
Great. So, anything else that you want to share about this sequel to the Blank White Page that you think readers would be particularly interested in learning about?
Well, I think, like I said, they're both can be considered standalones. But in book one, the whole reason Tatum is even in Southeast Alaska, living off the grid, was from a challenge from her dad. Their family owned a real estate empire, so to speak, and Dad Charles was uh, considering retirement, and he had two children, Tatum and his son Charlie. Charlie was more of a financial bean counter type person, very good with numbers, not so good with people. And Tatum was the complete opposite. She was a people person. She was the deal closer. And to determine resilience, creativity, being able to live off the grid for 6 months, he issued a challenge to both of them. And her challenge was Southeast Louisiana or Alaska, and Charlie was in Canada. And Charlie, needless to say, booked it as soon as the food ran out, and he went home. But Tatum fell in love. She thrived in the area. She was inspired by the challenge of being able to hunt and forage and make a life for herself in the bush of Southeast Alaska. So that's the biggest thing I think you would miss by not reading book one is how she got there and what it took for her to really understand that that's where she needed to be, not in the big metro Chicago area living on concrete asphalt. And, she loved being out in the woods. Um, Poe, I think, was a pretty unique character. I don't know where on earth he came from, but I thought, he was the perfect companion for her at first. Not only as a kind of a guardian angel, but a two-legged watchdog. Anybody that came close to her or the cabin, he, called out and let her know that she had company, whether it was a person or another animal. So that was a fun character to write into both stories.
Can you tell the readers who might not know who Poe is? What is Poe? Poe's what?
Post Raven, a black raven,
Black Raven.
and he showed up the first couple of days after um, Tatum arrived, and he just stuck around, and she started feeding him. She would fish, and he would get the carcass scraps, and she did a lot of cooking on a black stone, and he would get food from that, and they just bonded right away, and which is extremely unusual for a raven because they usually are very fearful, of humans, and don't come that close.
So, you mentioned that this one had a little more angst than normal because you generally tend to write low angst books, but actually some of your earlier works I think have a lot more angst, and it's mostly recently that you've gone to a more lower angst kind of book. So, what made you decide to get back into the action and create a little bit more angst on this one?
I just felt like it fit the story. That you know, living in the wilds of Southeast Alaska has its dangers, not just from ice and animals, but humans and other things. And I felt like it was important to build a little bit of that tension or the angst into there. Certainly, when uh, River takes her first jet ride from Alaska to Chicago, I thought that was a fun scene to write.
It was. It was a fun scene to read.
Yeah, I thought it was kind of hilarious when Reba, who's a very young Athabascan girl and River's goddaughter, basically told her, "Hey, if you don't want to go, I'll go in your place." She was all excited, and here River is thinking, "Oh my God, this kid will go and I won't go." So, I think that kind of spurred her into making her final decision. But it was a good decision for both of them to go because River needed to see where Tatum came from, and Tatum needed to see that that wasn't the life she wanted anymore. The life that she wanted was with Reba and with Tatum and with Nikita and in the bush with Poe. And that was her new chapter of life, or her blank white page.
So, in terms of, you mentioned the term that it's an actual term, dangerous ice, right?
Right.
And what kind of research did you do for that to be able to describe it so clearly?
Google, Google, Google. And I'd also seen, in several movies and TV shows. I'm a big TV fan of the uh, Alaskan shows like Port Protection, The Last of the Alaskans, different shows like that show people living off the grid and thriving and working together as a community and building that village, so to speak. Even though it may have not have been an indigenous community, it was still a community, a village that all worked together to make everybody successful.
Oh, my wife loves those shows. She follows a couple of YouTubers and one
Yeah.
in Alaska and the people who build their own stuff. And yeah, she loves that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Me, I just get my information from you. So, the the village in your book, is that an actual place?
No, it's totally fictional. Like I said, I've seen a couple of TV shows. I think The Last Alaskans have several different examples of different indigenous villages, and I tried to kind of use those as examples. But some of the things that I built into the village were totally fictional.
Okay. But it's a pretty vivid picture, which is why I was curious as to, how'd you get that picture? Where did you find that information out? So it sounds like those different shows that you watch. So as far as living off the grid, I mean, this isn't the first kind of sort of living off the grid kind of book that you've written. You've written about, people um, really creating their own stuff and using, cutting down trees and all of that. So do you have personal experience living off the grid? How, I mean, besides watching these shows, how'd you learn about all this?
Not really experienced living off the grid, but we were very poor when I was young, and we either hunted it, raised it, grew it, or foraged for it for a lot of our meals. And
Okay.
um, we just didn't have the money to go and buy all the stuff from the grocery store. So we learned at a very early age how to hunt and how to fish and how to process, the game, how to grow stuff in the gardens. I mean, we'd have a garden that was probably 2 acres big. When you've got a family of six to feed, it takes quite a bit of food. We raised our own cattle. We would trade a calf for a pig, to get pork and different things like that. So, not traditionally off the grid, but a lot of the experiences, going hunting and fishing and camping and having to set up camp and how to build campfires, all that, just something we had to learn to do.
So canning and smoking fish and things like that, you know how to do all that?
I don't, I'm not a big fish person. I love to fish, but I'm just not a fish is just not in my taste repertoire. But I love to fish. My family has done some smoking. My dad and my brother are both fantastic with smokers and grills. Making pickles, making jelly, all that I did as a young child. And that was a lot of fun. It was a lot of hard work. We'd can our own vegetables and stuff, and it was hard work, but it was necessary to keep us fed.
Yeah. So you mentioned I mean, I love Poe as a character, and I want to weave back to that because it seems like from book one to book two, the relationship with Poe kind of evolves. Did you plan that for that to become even more prominent and more, I don't know, they I don't know how to describe it, but they become closer in a way, right?
Yeah, yeah. Uh, they're not to the point where he's going to let her handle him, but he has basically made the family fall in love with him, being the character that he is. And when they start the process of building the new cabin, and they're using a chainsaw mill, they come up with an idea that they're going to make him a condo because he was previously living in just a milk crate type thing.
Right.
So that was one of Tatum's goals, was she's going to build him a true house so he'd have it, because he wouldn't come inside. That was his limit. He would stop at the door and he just would not come inside because he was fear being trapped, I guess. So one day while Tatum is doing some baking and other things, River decides she's going to make the condo. So she ends up making a condo for Poe, and they line it with the rabbit pelts, and they still do the water bottles, the hot water bottles at night, just to keep him warm, because he's a part of their family.
Yeah.
So
Then was I imagining it? Because I thought I remember there's a scene where she actually does get to touch his feathers or pet him or something, right?
She got to touch his head finally.
His head. Okay. So he does finally let her touch him, just barely, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
barely.
I know that. I know that.
Yeah.
Okay, like I said before, you have other books where building things or working the land, hard work is a central theme. So, besides the hunting, fishing, things like that, can you talk about these other books where you write about these sort of accomplished women who get these things done? You have a number of different series that's kind of a central theme. Can you tell us about some of those other books?
Some of my older books, a couple of them, Forever Home is one of them. It's back in the 1860s, and it's more of a fur trader, trapper type woman
Right.
that loses her father.
Yeah. Bee Charmer.
Tragically
It starts
to
with the Bee Charmer, right? Though, isn't the Bee
starts with the
Charmer
bee
first?
charmer. Yeah,
And then Forever Home,
yeah,
right?
bee
Yeah.
charmer first. Yep. So it's a 2 book series, and it's about their adventures, and when she meets a woman that's working at one of the hotels that she stays at when she comes in to trade out her pelts. And they start a relationship, and she decided she's not going back out on trap line, up along the Canadian coast. This is set in the Pacific Northwest. And so they decided that they were going to start a life on their own. And they built a cabin. There's a older indigenous Native American lady that Maggie, who is very fond of uh, the two young ladies, and they end up going and creating a house away from town, setting up trap lines and doing things that out there. And then I've got the Cast Iron Farm series. It's more
Yeah, that's the one.
contemporary,
Yeah, that one definitely has a lot of that. Yeah.
and it's not just the women, because they are very, very strong women, and one of them is a very brilliant scientist. But that brings in more of the family.
Yeah. Mhm.
Uh, uh, the main character's brother decides to move on to the property, starts a couple different businesses, making hand forged knives and different things like that.
Mhm.
So it's just it's characters that I really enjoy portraying in books and in my stories. It's it's the women that I was raised with and raised by. People that were very strong and independent, and most of my books, with the exception of a few, are Southern based, and that's a lot of what I write about, because it's an area that I know and love well.
Yep.
The cast iron books are set in Western North Carolina, which are just beautiful areas. They go out on the Appalachian Trail in one of the books, and it's more of a family oriented versus a single couple. Um, but I think that the books follow the main characters very, very well throughout the entire series, from first meeting to having children together, and
Yeah.
seeing them grow.
Yeah. So what do you think it is that's appealing? Because I think it is appealing to the readers out there about women who live off the land, or who really work the land, basically.
I like telling those kind of stories because they're different.
Mhm.
Yes, I've written some crime dramas with FBI agents and different things like that, and I try to make my characters more real to the people that I grew up with,
Mhm.
that aren't actresses or politicians or very important dignitary type people, just everyday type people that are struggling to survive.
So is there going to be a third or fourth book in the Blank White Page series?
You never know. You know, one of my biggest, I won't say it's a downfall, but I just hate to say goodbye to characters. And when you spend months and years developing characters, it's hard to say goodbye. It's like saying goodbye to a family member. So it, I don't. I think I have maybe one book that actually ends with the word "the end," because I have a hard time saying this is the end of their story, because you never know what's going to come up next.
Yeah. And well, I don't know. What's that? Which book is that? What's book that has
It
the
was-
end?
it had to be one of my first ones, because
Huh,
it
okay.
hasn't been lately.
I was going to say, because you're definitely write quite a few series books, which brings us to, I know what you're working on now, but you want to share with the audience here what you're currently working on?
Absolutely. The cowgirls are riding Stampede in my head right now, and there are three new cowgirl books coming out. The first one is Gold Bands and Silver Buckles, which is out September 1st. The second one is called Stormy Blues, and that is probably one of my most angst filled books that I've written. But I think it very much suits the story and the plot lines. And then the final book so far in the series, and I don't have a date on that, it's probably going to be next summer sometime, is called Brimstone Baggage. And that's expanding the MC2 crew just a little bit by an unplanned pseudo adoption by Harley Boone, who is one of the main characters. He's one of the old cowboys that take in Stormy and
Cool.
Cole. He is asked to become a guardian for a nephew that he really didn't even know he had. And he's a great young man. He's gone through hell with his family. Both of his family were addicts, and they didn't treat him very well. And all the kids ever wanted to do was play football and be a cowboy. So, landing at the MC squared was perfect for him.
It's a great
So,
book. Both, all of them, all three of them are. I got a chance to read them. They're all great. Isn't there something else that though you were working on, a tattoo book or what's it, inked?
yeah,
Is this what's called?
yeah. I promised Julie I would lay off the cowgirls for a little while. So I got a couple others that have been started along the way, and the one I'm working on right now is called Inked, and it's about a military veteran that was injured, and when she returns back to Savannah, Georgia, where she's from, she hooks up with her best friend from middle school, who is now transgendered. Uh, he was a awesome football player. Went to college on a college scholarship for football. Got injured, and when they meet up again in Savannah upon her return, um, Lincoln is now Lynx because he's begun his transition. And he goes through the full transition. He's outcast by his family. His grandmother, who pretty much has raised him most of his life, has been the sole person in his family. But they decide, because they both had a huge love of art, that they were going to start a tattoo parlor or a tattoo shop. So just barely into that book, probably 3 or 4 chapters, but it's going to be a little bit more of a romance
Okay.
than some of the cowgirl stuff, or at least I'm hoping that's where it's headed.
Okay.
There's a couple others that I'm just been playing around with. There's one that's called Jericho Creek, which is it's a bison farm in Montana,
Yeah.
and a woman has divorced from her husband, finally realizing that she wasn't in love with him, that he wasn't the person for her. So she moves back home onto the bison ranch with her parents, and her working on the ranch, she runs across bones that turn into be dinosaur bones.
Wow. Cool.
So we're gonna dig into that, so to speak.
I love that. Dig into that. That's great. Well, those all
Yeah.
sound great. And hopefully people will get Dangerous Ice. It's a very, very good sequel or second book in that series. I've read them both and really enjoy the characters, all of the characters. The characters from the village are great. The characters from the town, which is a real town, right? Glen Holland
Glen Allen is a real town,
is
yes.
a real town in Alaska. Yeah. So, yeah. Anything else you'd like to share with folks out there?
Yep. I just hope you'll enjoy the reading and continue to support our local authors, or our young authors, and our established authors, and visit Affinity, buy on Amazon if that's what's easiest for you. But please continue to support your authors so we get inspiration to keep telling the stories that we tell, because it's really, really hard out there right now.
Yes, thank you. I concur. And thank you for letting me grill you. Although I'm not sure it was much of a grill, right? It was just,
Yeah, you did pretty good. Yeah.
yeah. So yes, appreciate everybody's support of Sapphic authors. Goodness knows we need that right now. We definitely need that right now.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.